Welcome in. If you are just clicking in, you have reached Just Stamp with Anna Marie. I am here for Friday Facebook Live. I'm going to be sharing with you a springtime project, and what I've got going on down here are the tools that we are going to need to create this project, but not just this project. These are tools that we need always. I had the pleasure of stamping with some newbies this past week, and I have a couple of people that are so interested in getting started, but it's always kind of daunting. Like, where do you get started? What do you need to get started? And so I came up with a list of tools, basic tools that we need, and don't you know, that's what I'm going to be using on this project today as well. So number one tool that I need is my paper trimmer scorer. You know, I love Stampin' Ups because it's got the two blades on it, one to score and one to cut. It's got all the measurements up at the top, as well as the extendable arm to extend your paper if you're going across for 11 or 12 inches. So that's what one tool is. Secondly, I love the paper snips. You need some nice sharp cutting tools. I like these because they have the short tips on them. Makes them more easy to manage. My pick-a tool, I'm constantly using this. If I've just been to the nail salon and had my nails trimmed short, that little tip is so helpful for picking things up, as well as the opposite end that has the gummy tip for picking things up. So pick-a tool is on my list. You guys know I love a nice, clean, crisp fold. The embossing or the bone folder will do that trick for you. And I have many of these floating around. This one happens to be my team bone folder with the Stamperistas on it. And also a piercing mat. So this is perfect when you have those photopolymer stamps. You need that extra cush. You can also use it for piercing. We're not doing a whole lot of piercing these days, but it's perfect for protecting your furniture. But otherwise, we need it for the photopolymer stamps. And so one more, or a couple more basic things. So I'm going to show you what my chamois looks like. I can guarantee you when you order a new chamois, which is your cleaning cloth, it will not look like this. It will be nice and pretty and kind of like a lavender, Highland heather color. None of this black stuff. But this just shows that mine has been well used. It's stained. It is clean. I do wash it every couple days. This one's clean, ready to go, and I store them in one of the cases. These are available for purchase from Stampin' Up. Just about a few dollars for a set of 5, I think. So the chamois, and the one last thing that we are going to need always are acrylic blocks, and you can either choose individual blocks, or to make things easier, I recommend the Stamparatus. With the Stamparatus tool, you just need one tool. Stamparatus is $49. Otherwise, you need various sizes of acrylic blocks. So those are the basics. That's what we're going to be needing to construct most cards, most projects. I'm going to push those over, make way for today's projects. Now that we know what our tools are, and Debbie says the chocolate might be eaten before the project's completed, but these are adorable chocolates that you probably won't even want to eat. Let me share with you the stamp set that we're using. This little project focuses on the Springtime Joy. And you can see on my little card, I have used quite a few of the images. I've got the bunnies, the butterflies, the sentiments, and on the inside, or on the little post, I have another sentiment, and I have some of the flowers from the stamp set. This has just been a well-loved set for me this season. Springtime Joy. I like that it has the balance of sentiments, and it's also got the nice little images for spring that you can color in. Not just for Easter, for any time, which is what I'm doing now. It's a springtime card. Could be baby cards too, I think. So it's going to be well used beyond just Easter time. So there's my little card. I'm going to push this out of the way and share with you The way I created that little jar of chocolate bunnies, I am using the jar punch. This coordinates with the jar of flowers suite or stamp set bundle. I'm going to be using Memento black ink, and this is also another basic. If you have no other ink, you need a nice basic black ink. This is perfect for Stampin' Blends, and it's probably my go-to ink of all time. I am going to be using subtle colors, and I'm coordinating with this card. This card was soft sea foam. The card I'm going to be making with you today is Pool Party, and I'm coordinating that with the subtle 6x6 designer series paper. So I love these paper packs. They're 6x6. In this particular pack, there is an assortment of all of the subtle colors in different prints. And as I say, this one's the subtles. So I get 2 sheets of each pattern, 4 sheets in each color in the subtles group. Soft sea foam, and some of them have a wood grain pattern. You flip it over and it has tiny text knocked out. There are patterns with the dots, and this is probably my favorite. So every year we have packs of the designer series paper. They always switch up the patterns. I really like the little dots on them, so I'm going to miss these. This is like a texturized pattern, so flip there. So now we have our 4 patterns: wood grain, the text, the dots, and the texturized, and that comes in each of the subtles colors. So that's kind of why you're going to see I paired this up. I paired up my soft seafoam green with petal pink. Well, the project that I'm making with you is going to be Pool Party and Calypso Coral. And both of those colors, all of these colors are part of the Subtles collection. So those are the papers I'm using. I will share with you also the die cuts that we're using. I have made using one of my favorite die sets, and I am so happy that this is not on the retiring last chance list. These are the Stitch So Sweetly dies, and you can see we have graduated sizes in rectangles that have stitching and they have scallops. Plus we have some labels up here with the stitching as well in different sizes, and there's a tiny one, and then there's also one that I'm going to be using for this project. It has a little oval shape to it with some curly cues at the end. And these are my go-to dies, stitched so sweetly. They are not retiring, and I'm so happy about that, because either my projects have die cuts from this set or they have die cuts from another set which is retiring called Stitch Shapes. So I'm really sad about Stitch Shapes. I'm happy that Stitch So Sweetly is staying on. So that's the die I'm going to be using. Those are the dies I'm using, the stamps I'm using, the paper I'm using. Now for our card. All right, we are ready to get started. All right, I'm going to be calling out the measurements for you. I'll tell you the particular product. Now that you know all the tools that you need to have, the materials that you need to have handy, we are ready to start our easel card with Jar of Chocolate Bunnies featuring Springtime Joy stamp set. So I'm going to start off with my cardstock, and I have pre-cut this cardstock. If you're a longtime stamper, you know our paper comes in 8.5 by 11 as well as 12 by 12. Most of my cards start off with the 8.5 by 11 size, and I have trimmed it down on my paper trimmer. I trimmed it down from, let's see, I'm trying to get this out of the way so it's not interfering. It's not easy. Let's see. There we go. I trimmed it on my paper trimmer to half the width, so now it's 4 1/4 by 11, and I've scored it already at 5.5. That's my basic card size. Those are the basic measurements. I'm going to put one more score in here, at 2 3/4, so 2.75. I'm going to score it there. So I've got two scores, 2.75 or 2 3/4, and then again at 5.5. And that is the basic construction for your easel card. I'm going to put this aside for just a minute, and I'm going to bring in my bone folder, and I'm going to review. When we have scored the paper, there's a little crease that's created in the paper. On one side, it's a valley crease, and on the flip side, it's going to be a mountain crease. Typically, we want the valley crease on the outside, and so we're just going to fold that over. So your mountain mountain score line will be on the inside, and we're going to burnish that down with our bone folder. And then again, I am going to fold my 2 3/4 inch score in, and I'm going to crease that as well. And there is my basic construction for my easel card. So started with 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 2 3/4, and then again at 5.5. I just folded it on these score lines, and I've got my basic construction there. I also need, in the same color cardstock, if you're doing it like my project, if you're switching up your colors, you can do a coordinating color, a contrasting color of some kind. I need another piece of the same color cardstock. This one measures 3.5 by 4 5/8. And those are the two solid colors that I need. I also chose to use, this is not cooperating with me. Let's see if I can get rid of this. Sorry about that. There. Maybe that'll be helpful. I've also chosen that designer series paper. This is the Calypso Coral pattern with the dots, and I'm going to need 2 pieces of this as well. I'm going to go ahead and trim that up for you now and tell you that on this one I need the larger size, which is 4 3/8. So just a little over 4 1/4, 4 3/8, and I'm going to cut the larger piece first. 4 3/8 by 3 1/4. So the larger piece is 4 3/8 by 3 1/4. Now I'm going to take that same sheet of paper, and I'm going to cut my second piece down to 2 3/4 by 4. So I'm going to trim this down to 4. And in the other direction, I need 2 3/4, which is just what it is right there. So now we have our second sheet of coordinating paper. I do have one last little scrap left in that designer series paper. I'm going to hold on to that. I am going to need it in just a few minutes. So this will go here. The smaller one's going to go here. And I talked about those Stitch So Sweetly labels or cutouts. I'm going to have a larger one that goes onto this panel. This is the standing panel. And I'm going to have the smaller scallop square here at the base of the easel card. So this one measures approximately, I wish I hadn't taken away my ruler. Here we go. I'm going to tell you exactly what it measures. You know, the Stitch So Sweetly comes in graduated sizes. So across it measures about 2 15/16 by just over 4. So just under 3, just over 4. And the second one measures about 3 5/8 by 2.5. And the coordinating paper I made just a tiny bit larger, about a 1/4 inch larger all the way around. So I've got my 2 labels. Now I do have one last label that I'm going to need to cut. This is going to have our sentiment, and remember, this comes from Stitch So Sweetly. And I'm just going to die cut one piece for you. I pre-cut these two, but at my class the other day I did have a question from one of the stampers who had never stamped before. She held up her die cut and said, "Anna Marie, can you explain, where did this come from?" And so I kind of have to step back a little bit. Things aren't already pre-done for me. I did take the dies. I took my stamp and emboss machine. So this one's the mini that I love to keep on my tabletop because of its size. It folds up so nicely. It can be stored out of the way slightly. So there's my basic machine, the stamp and cut machine, or cut and emboss, sorry. I have my little scrap of cardstock. This is basic white, and I have my die. Now I'm going to build a sandwich with the platforms. I need number 1, and then I'm going to need a pad number 2. I add my paper and I add my die. Then I need to sandwich it with another 2. So there's my sandwich. I'm just going to crank it through. And on this machine, I like to stagger the plates. So I don't try to flush them up evenly. That's going to be a little hard to get going. So I want to stagger them. It's going to feed through more easily without me struggling. I'm just going to put that through. I'm going to take my handle and crank it through. Let's see if I can get in here. And there's my die cut. So that's how that was created. They aren't pre-done for you. You can you can cut to your need. That was with the Stitch So Sweetly dies. There we go. So now we've got that back. All right, so let's get started with our assembly and stamping. These are all the pieces we're going to need now. I still want that scrap. I've got my layers here, layers, sentiment. There we go. So let's get stamping. I am going to bring in a little surface to stamp on, and my first stamping is going to be the easy base of the card. I've got this smaller Stitch So Sweetly rectangle. I'm bringing in my Memento black ink. Let's see if I can put this in the center a little bit better. And I'm going to bring in my stamps. I am using the sweet little flowers that are in the stamp set. There's like a tulip and some kind of a little basic flower. And I'm going to bring in the sentiment that says, "May the new life of spring bring you joy." And these acrylic blocks are one of the basics that I recommend when you're first starting stamping. You can choose to purchase individual acrylic blocks. You can buy the entire set, or you can skip the blocks altogether and go straight to a Stamparatus and need just the Stamparatus for stamping. So I'm going to place this, I'm going to stamp this down on the smaller rectangle. Nice firm impression. There we go. And next I am going to stamp my small flowers. So I'm going to do first the little floral, and it bends to the left, and I'm going to put it right towards the base of the paper. And I am going to be putting a little bunny in here on top. So I just want to have some space for the bunny, and then I'll put the other flower down low, a little bit closer to the sentiment. So I've got 2 little flowers. I am going to be stamping and hand snipping a bunny. So I can set this aside. We'll color in just a moment. Let me continue with the stamping. And next I'm going to take my larger scalloped rectangle with the stitching. This is the rectangle that's going to have that punch from the jar punch. I'm going to insert this to the basic white Stitch So Sweetly rectangle, and I'm just going to bring it over a tiny bit. I'm going to punch out that jar, and voila, I have a little base for my jar of chocolate bunnies. And I'm going to do some stamping on this before we do any construction. So let me bring in my bunny. There's going to be a trio of bunnies on this easel card, so I'm going to stamp this. He's going to come kind of at an angle, and I want him right around there. And I'm also going to stamp 2 extra bunnies that are going to be hand snipped. And To save you from watching me stamp and hand snip, I've already pre-done that. They're the exact same bunnies, and I'll tell you what I colored them with as I'm coloring this bunny. They've already been hand snipped, so I'm going to put those aside. I need those in just a couple minutes. Next, I'm going to bring in that cute little butterfly, which is on, let's see, I'm going to kind of judge where I need this little butterfly to be flying right around. So let's try and make sure I have my placement right. So these are the elements that are going to be on the label. Now that I brought in my label, I'm going to go ahead and stamp that and also add another butterfly. So my sentiment here says welcome spring, and it's going to go right across the center of this label. And there we go, welcome spring. Next, I'm going to add the little butterfly here as well. And I'm going to put it right over the spring. And that is it, I believe, for our stamping. I'm going to do a little bit of coloring before we start assembling. I am using stamping blends to color. That makes it really quick and easy. And for this particular card, I am using the soft seafoam for the grass and the leaves of the flower. I'm going to be using ivory and light crumb cake for the bunny. And for the bunny's crown of flowers, I'm using light calypso coral and dark pull party. And I think that's about, oh, I'm also going to want a dark so saffron for the butterflies. So real quick, I'm going to start off with the flowers here. I'll do the little leaves. This is soft seafoam green. Really simple coloring. And I'm going to show you, you do want to be on a surface because on the back side you're going to see that the color bleeds through. That's the alcohol in the Stampin' Blends. Then I'm going to, and you know what, I'm going to try and do this smartly. I'm going to do all my green areas. I also have little tiny leaves on the crown of flowers for the bunny. And I'm done with my seafoam green. Let's see, I'm going to bring in calypso coral for the crown. And I'm just going to do a couple of the flowers in this color. And I'm going to do, let's see, I think I'm going to do one of the flowers this color as well. I'm going to do the little tulip in calypso coral. I'm going to bring in the pool party and do the remaining flowers. And I'm going to do this little flower in pool party. There we go. And I am going to do the butterflies in So Saffron. So I'm using the brush tip. Brush tip comes into the tight areas better than the brush tip would, so that you don't go outside of the lines. We do have a tool, a lifter, if we do go outside the lines to pull out some of the color. So no worries if you go a little bit outside the line, it can be fixed. So then I'm going to do the body, maybe a little tiny line of calypso coral and the dots on the butterfly. There we go. And last, let's color up the bunny. And so this little bunny, again, ivory and light crumb cake, and I'm just going to take the ivory, I'm going to start off with and go around the edges, and every bunny is coming out differently. This bunny has a little patchwork of color, a little brown eye, bringing in a little bit under the crown and around the ears. And on this particular bunny, I don't have to worry too much about doing his lower body because he's going to be covered by the other bunny that's popping over him. So there we go. I've colored the bunny, and if you remember, I did 2 extra bunnies. One is going to be sitting here, and the other one will sit on the sentiment. So those are the elements that I'm going to use. Let's now go over and take care of that little jar of chocolate bunnies. So the first thing I'm going to do, I will need one of the little mason jar shaker domes. So these are sold in packs of 10. They coordinate with that jar punch, and they are designed to hold small embellishments. They're curved, you can see, and really cool. They have the adhesive built in on the top or on the front and also on the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be popping this from behind so you can see how that looks. And then here's the theory. It's going to be adhered to this backing. So that's the basics of it. But we have a couple of steps before we start adhering. So first off, if I show you my finished card, you will see I have a cute little twine bow. It's the twine that comes from the snail mail twine combo. There's a white and a pretty pink that actually picks up any of the colors of the designer paper. So this one was petal pink, and I think it goes nicely. We're also going to be pairing it with the Calypso coral. So before I even start adhering my jar of chocolate bunnies, I am going to set this up so it comes out nice and decorated. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to bring in my dome. I'm going to get some twine, and I'm using both colors for a little bit of extra interest. And I'm going to get enough to bring it around, wrap it, and tie a bow. It's out of control. And I have to confess that this twine pack and I get along a lot better than the linen thread spool and I. If you have stamped with me, you know I get so frustrated with that linen spool because it's hard to get it started. I just wind up trimming it, and it becomes a hot mess when I don't have the actual start line or starting point. And I don't know if that's just me or if that's just this batch of linen thread. It's been so frustrating. This twine, however, easy peasy, it works so easily for me. So what I'm going to do, because we're going to be inserting this behind the paper, I am going to bring in, let's see if I can get my pick tool to help me out here. There is a layer of adhesive, so I'm just going to pull this back and reveal just as much as I need to here. I am not going to take it all off because I don't want the stickiness yet. So I'm just going to add this here, and I'm leaving enough on the end to tie a bow, and it's actually going to come through that layer. So it needs to be peeking here. There we go. And it's going to come to the other side, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to wrap it around the back as well. So let me bring in my pick tool, lift that adhesive, or that, not the whole adhesive, just the covering, and I'm going to bring that around and cover that back up. And this portion now needs to come underneath that, is underneath this protection as well. So I'm going to lift that back up and bring it underneath that little area there. And I am going to be ready to make my bow. And you know, I love having my glue dot in position to help me with that twine and tying a bow. I'm just going to bring in my, let's see, pick a tool, and I'm going to lift off one of these dots from the tape of mini glue dots. And this one's a little bit of a struggle because I'm trying to attach it to plastic, as opposed to paper, it doesn't adhere so easily. So I'm going to bring in the twine right over it, hold my finger in position to let go. There we go. Not so bad. Now I'm ready to tie my bow, and you'll notice that I did pre-cut my twine. I wouldn't want the ends constricting my supply of twine here. So there we go. Now it's just a matter of tying a bow. And I am not going to trim off the tails. I'm not going to make it pretty yet. I'm going to leave that as a final step. So there's my covering for my jar of chocolate bunnies. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually attach it to this. Now I'm going to put it right through here, and then I'm going to fill the jar. Because this already has the adhesive on it, it makes it really easy. I don't have to apply any adhesive to it. I just need to reveal the backing. So I'm going to pull this off. All right, and I want to make sure I get my ribbon out of the way. It's a little bit sticky. And I'm going to bring this in. It's going to go right over top of the dome. Make sure your ribbon is popped through, and it'll push right into position. Kind of needs to stretch a little bit. And so now you can see I have my jar. What's left is to fill the jar, and you can see looking pretty cute. And again, I'm going to pull these just a little bit. I didn't want to trim them yet. I'll usually leave the trimming and the final touches as the last step. If you trim too soon, they're just going to fray anyway. All right, so how about some chocolate bunnies to fill this? So what are we using? My gosh, these are stinking cute. So I have these little itty bitty bunnies. They're from Russell Stover. They are chocolate bunnies. Look at the size of them. So there's my pinky, just to give you an idea of the size. How cute are these? And they have a lot of detail on them. You can see the little bunny ear. I mean, they are perfectly shaped. So if you want to know where I got them, I will tell you. Because it's so late in the season, it wasn't easy. I was successful. You go online and you're going to find that some of them are not available. I happened to find mine at Big Lots. So they were the only place in town that carried them, so that's where I ran over and picked them up. So I'm going to fill my little jar with about 7 bunnies, and I'm just going to use a little spoon to toss them in, so I don't want to touch all of them. I seriously doubt anyone's going to be eating these cute little chocolate bunnies, but just in case, I'm not touching all of them. So there's about 4, and if I put in 3 more, and I think that's about 7 there. So not a lot fits in there, but you don't have a lot. This little package is just 1.4 ounces, so you're going to see it was only half full, as you can barely see in there with the lighting on the camera. Not a lot is included, probably enough for, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 cards. So now I've got that done. The next thing I'm going to do is take this little scrap of designer series paper, and I'm going to snip it down. I'm not going to worry about punching it or cutting it any particular size. What I'm going to do is adhere it to the back of the jar. I'm going to flip it over so you see the pattern through on the other side. If we don't do that, the chocolate's going to be falling out as we're trying to position our cards. So I'm just going to peel this backing off, take my Pick-a tool again, and pull off that protection from the adhesive. I'm going to go ahead and put this little block with the dotted pattern right behind. There we go. That makes it much easier when I have to flip it over and secure it to my next layer, which is going to be my Calypso Coral pattern paper. And that's not the right one. I hope I cut, oh, phew. I'm trying to put it on the wrong one. There we go. This one's going to go easier. It's going to be layered on here. And you'll know my favorite adhesive is the one that gets along with me all the time. I'm going to take my multi-purpose liquid glue. I'm going to turn over my layer, and here's another tip. When you apply liquid glue, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want a big sticky mess. You're going to go dot, dot, not a lot. So, and you don't even have, you could do a full trail, but sometimes I've noticed when people do a trail, they just squeeze the bottle and too much adhesive comes out. So if you wanted to just do some occasional dots, that works as well. Dot, dot, not a lot. You can do the trail if you're not putting too much on there, but you do not want such a thick line that it starts to ooze out from behind your paper. That just makes it really difficult to craft. So I've got my layer of adhesive. I'm going to add it to the pattern paper, and I have about about an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch going all the way around. There we go. This now gets layered onto my solid cardstock, my pool party. I'm going to just layer that straight on again with multi-purpose liquid glue, and I'm coming right in through here, and I'm always put a little bit extra in the middle for good measure, not a lot though. So now I'm going to turn that over, position it centered so I have an equal border going all the way around. Look at that, how easy it's coming together now. And then I am going to flip this over, and I'm ready to adhere it to the easel card, but I don't want glue on the upper portion because it's going to be standing up. So if you could see, if I by chance got glue on part of it that's going to be sticking out, it's going to be a sticky mess. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take my ruler. I know that this flap is 2 3/4, so I'm just going to mark around where 2 1/2 would be so that I don't go any higher with the glue. And let's see, oh, there's a pencil there. I do have one handy. Let's reach across and grab that. And I'm not going to go any higher than the 2 1/2 inches on this layer. So I'm going to put the glue on this layer all the way around. And I suppose you could use tear and tape. This is more forgiving. I like forgiving. And this is going to be base aligned with the bottom of the card. So now if I bring this in, it's going to be horizontally centered, abutted to the base. So just go ahead and secure that down. And we have this layer completed. And so now you can see the construction here. So now I'm going to put my cute little sentiment right on here. We stamped it earlier. I've got a layer of the Calypso pattern paper. I have my little Stitch So Sweetly label that's been stamped with the flowers. This is going to be adhered directly onto the designer series paper. So just a little bit of glue here. Make up this layer. Secure that down. This then gets adhered to the card base itself. And I'm just applying a little bit of glue all the way around. This gets adhered. There is going to be about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Just move that over. Here's why I like liquid glue, because it is so forgiving. You can push it over a tiny bit. Now, we've got our easel back going on. I am going to put the bunny on, one of the bunnies on here, but I'm going to use a Stampin' Dimensional that's going to keep this, that's going to create a little dimension, and it's going to keep this layer from slipping forward. So I'm just going to flip that over, see if I can find my dimensionals. I'm just going to put a couple of them on right behind the bunny. Oops. And this depth helps keep that easel from slipping forward. So just like so. Now before I keep going, I'm going to do a little bit of touch up with my soft seafoam blend. I'm going to create a little tiny bit of grass popping out here, just kind of giving it a little bit of a grassy patchy area to sit on. And I'm going to be doing the same with the jar, so I'm just going to be setting that aside for now. I'm pretty happy with my sentiment, and of course that would go like so. Now I need to finish up my easel. What I'm going to do is add my bunny. This one gets popped up with dimensionals, so just put 1 or 2 on the back. Pop that in. And I'm going to put him right around there. So he's peeking through his little friend there. I'm going to add the sentiment, and again, this is going to be adhered with dimensionals. And just going to put that in position here, right around there. I'm going to add a little bit of grass to have the jar resting on a little patch of grass. And the bunny as well, just a little base to rest them on. And we are nearly done. I'm going to go ahead and trim up that twine now. And I'm looking for my ribbon scissors. So I'm going to just kind of trim these up so they look nice and clean. There's one, and I'm going to snip these as well. Let's see if I can turn it. There. So there is my easel card with jar of chocolate bunnies. Welcome spring. May the new life of spring bring you joy. You can mail it or you can hand gift it. And I've done one here in 2 subtle colors. One is soft seafoam and the other is pool party. These can be mailed if you slip them into a little padded envelope. If you're going to be presenting them in person, I might just slip them into a little translucent envelope. But there you go. There's our 2 cards. 2 different colors. And I hope that you will try the easel card. It's a perfect design for any occasion. Really super cute for spring. And if you have any questions, you can post them here. If you like this lesson and you want to see more of my tutorials, you can skip over to my YouTube channel. I have lots of instructional videos there. You can join me on my mailing list. I will post the link above, and that's so you can receive information about any upcoming classes or get on my mailing list to learn about promotions going on, including that last chance list. So one more thing before I go, I wanted to show you another little card I made with this jar punch, the jar of flowers. This time it was filled not with chocolate but with little seashells. So hello, nice beachy scene with seashells there, and nice shiny sunshiny day. Really, really fun to add those little jars filled with different things. The domes are still available. They are not retiring. So if you